Hey everybody.
Fat Refine's here.
I'm Mary Beth.
And I'm Laura.
And I'm Nikki.
How's it going?
It's great. Look, there's 3 of us.
There are.
Wow.
Welcome.
Thanks. I never get to be on the podcast.
Yay. So this is Tales from the Put Out Closet. If you've ever listened to our podcast before, we did Frankenstein like back in the fall. We've also done some like just random one-off podcasts, like getting to know us type of podcasts in the past. But this time we're going to do Mad Men.
What do you mean, do Mad Men?
We're going to do a Mad Men podcast. It's very exciting.
I know.
It's my favorite show.
I know. We're going to talk about it and how much we love it.
I'm worried that I won't do it justice.
And how much we love Don Draper.
Yeah. Well, how much I love Peggy Olson.
And I love Don Draper.
Oh, goodness. Well, but I'm worried that we're not going to do it justice.
Oh, sure we are.
Because it's so good.
I know. It's great.
But anyway, we all have our notebooks. We all have lots of notes that we've taken. So that's exciting.
Oh, yes. Here. Oh, wait. Mine's got cupcakes on it.
But I think we should introduce ourselves just in case that this is your very first time listening to our podcast. We would love it if you came over to YouTube and watched our podcast with us. We will show up like some just basic pictures while we're talking about the show. We won't show any clips or anything, but we will have some visual aids. And of course you can watch with us if you want, but listening's cool too. We are vintage resellers, so we resell vintage collectibles like the vases that you might see behind us. Everything mid-century we're super into. So we're going to add that as a part of this podcast. So not only will we be talking about Mad Men and the themes and the things that are going on within the show, but we'll also be talking about the decor, the costumes, everything mid-century, especially also what's going on like during the time period.
It's such a cool idea because then you have a whole different perspective on why these things are why these items are popular.
Yes.
That are popular now and
exactly.
how the trends came about and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Me too.
Shall we jump right in?
That's my line. I'm excited.
Are you?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So the intro. So I guess we have to talk about the intro first, right?
Right.
So the intro of Mad Men. So you just get this like depiction of the main character whom you don't know yet. But he's like in silhouette, right?
Right.
And this man walks into an office and then the office just starts to sort of dissolve around him and everything starts collapsing. And then you start to see this silhouetted character just like plummeting from a building. And he's surrounded by like images of like family photographs and advertising, especially women, drinks, cocktails. What else do you think about that?
Yeah. I think that at first he goes past all of his advertising, slogans and stuff like that before it starts with, family pictures and stuff like that.
Right.
And I just think it's cool. He's in shadow, so it makes him kind of a mysterious character right off the bat. Sort of a shadow of himself. We know that we're going to have a lot to unpack and figure out about him as the show goes on. So
the shot that I've got up right now, if you're watching on YouTube, especially, he's like falling right through the middle of this cocktail, of this glass. So I feel like that's very foreshadowing, honestly. So
yes.
I feel like that's...
Spoiler alert.
I feel like we have a lot to unpack there.
We need to address the fact that are we talking to people on this podcast who have never watched the show or people who have seen the show? Because we don't want to give too many spoilers for those who haven't.
Right. So I think both. I mean, I think it's okay to give a little bit away, but I do think that there are going to be some of our watchers specifically who I know have never watched. So some of our subscribers are happy and excited to start watching the series along with the podcast. So we don't want to give too much away.
We don't want to give too much away, but Don Draper may or may not be an alcoholic. Spoiler.
So at the end of the intro, it goes back to him in silhouette and you see him from the back. So he's got like his arm draped up over the side of the chair with a cigarette in hand, and you see him from the back, which is a theme throughout the entire show. You keep seeing Don Draper from the back.
How do you feel about it from a graphic design point of view?
That was a really popular design style in the early 2000s, was that silhouetted vector art type of style. So it matches the time period of the early 2000s, I think, and I don't know, I like it.
Yeah, one of the analysis I read about it said that it was wildly popular from the very first time that the producers and stuff saw it, and that they just adopted it immediately throughout the show, as in all their promos and things like that, because I liked it so much.
I love it. All right. First scene. What's the first scene, Laura? Tell us all about it.
Okay. So in the first scene, Don is sitting alone by himself in the middle of this really cool New York club. It's very Art Deco. So
Again, you see him from the back.
Yes. That's where they get the image from the title sequence, I think. I mean, it's just fitting for it to start like that, isn't it?
Agree.
And so you see immediately this. It's just a really opulent nightclub, and even though 1960 is the year, of course, this is straight up from the 50s, with all the glam and the smoke and the
Definitely.
we didn't say the name of the episode.
Oh, we haven't said the name of the episode. What is the name of the episode?
I know the name. I can contribute that. The name of the episode is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes.
Smoke gets in your eyes. So yeah, everybody literally in this bar is smoking. So the first time you see our main character, you don't know his name yet, but he's like scribbling on a cocktail napkin, right? He's like writing down all these like ideas like really quickly. And you don't really know what he's scribbling exactly unless you pause and look at it. But then, he gets approached by a busboy who happens to be African American. Comes up and what does he say? He says something about Reader's Digest says cigarettes will kill you or something. What does he say exactly?
Yeah, well, I think Dawn approaches him first and asks him about smoking. Like,
Oh,
what
maybe you're right.
brand he smokes.
He
That's
asks for a light. He asks for a light, and it may or may not have been a ploy to see what kind of cigarettes the guy smokes to get the conversation started.
Gotcha.
And Don acts like he owns the place, right?
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
He definitely owns the room because, the minute that guy approaches him, he wants him to light a cigarette. I mean, that's just like a big power move.
So anyway, they get into this conversation about Lucky Strike cigarettes versus Old Gold cigarettes. The African American gentleman is like, they gave them to us in the service. And so they're just talking about, Don's like, how could I get you to switch? What would it take? And so anyway, it's just that sort of conversation. But that's also the first, one of the most, not one of the most, but one of the first shocking moments of the show as well. Because this other gentleman approaches and he's like, hey, is Sam bothering you? Like, how dare this African American gentleman talk to you? In this place, like, hey, is he bothering you? So it's like the first like racist like yikes moment of the show too.
Yeah, the first of many in the episode because they really go over the top, I think, in the pilot.
Yes.
To like really heavy-handedly establish what kind of show it's going to be, and not just the time period, but that they're not going to ignore the injustices of racism and sexism and women in the workplace, women at home, all those things. They really kind of tell you in this first episode how far they're going to go on all those topics.
Absolutely. So it ends, the gentleman is like, I love smoking, and Don's like, oh, I love smoking. Very good, and he writes that down.
Which is what I would rename the episode.
Oh, Nikki. Oh, this is another thing that we're going to do in the show. So apart from like picking out, we're going to pick out like random objects in the show that are mid-century and fun to talk about. We'll talk about, again, the dress, the costuming, but we're also going to like rename the episode. So instead of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, Nikki's is.
I have selected I Love Smoking.
I Love Smoking.
As the title.
It's a good show. When I was starting to think about it, I was like, there's like I bet at 50 different titles you can have for the show. I think it's excellent writing when that happens. All these phrases and stuff. So at the end, we'll just ask everyone to go back on YouTube and name the episode with us.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So you guys can rename the episode as well.
And then now, before we move on, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, I was just going to say though that they really establish a hierarchy too, like that. Don's the boss. He is the boss over the waiter. He's the boss over the manager, because when the manager comes up, Don dismisses him. He's like, yeah, get me another drink. Leave me alone. I'm talking to this guy.
Right.
You know, and then they make a shared joke. He and the waiter make a shared joke about the waiter's wife and women in general, women in their magazines.
Oh, women love their magazines.
They love their magazines. And Don goes, yes, I do. And so, I mean, they're going to tackle all that head on. They're not going to try to fix anything, because, you know, they're just going to show us the injustices and the inequality and all that kind of stuff.
Got you.
I think the show got a lot of criticism, actually, about how much it focuses on these really distasteful subjects, and I think it turned a lot of people off. A lot of viewers felt like they were glorifying. Sorry,
Dixie, we can't play right now.
It's our other co-host.
We're gonna pause. Hold on just a second.
So a lot of people.
Sorry about that.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I thought we were gonna just pick right up.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of people felt like the show was glorifying the time period, like with all of its flaws, like saying these aren't, like we should look up to these people because they're glamorous and they're cool, even with their smoking and their misogyny and their racism and all that. But I don't see it that way. I think it's important to get a clear view of everything that was wrong. It's not glorifying it when they obviously wanted it to be shocking and appalling.
Yeah.
You know, we're supposed to be appalled by it.
I think that I wrote that down as one of the main themes of the show, is that Weiner wanted us to be shocked in this episode. Many things are meant to shock us as the viewer. Okay, so then we cut to our main character. We still don't know his name yet, knocking on a woman's door. And so a woman opens the door. Obviously, she's happy to see him. She's drawing a picture of a puppy. She's sort of in advertising too, as well. She's a creative, so she works for a greeting card company, and she's drawing like a puppy for a grandmother's day card, right?
Yep. And, you know, when he's standing outside of her door, we see him in silhouette again. And so all through this scene as well, it's a theme that keeps running through the scene, is that we see him from the back of his head.
Yeah. And he's there to get advice really on this cigarette campaign. He's like, I really need help with this. I've got nothing. And she's like, oh, you really are here to work. So insinuating that wasn't what she expected him to be there for. So we find out Don Draper's name in this scene. We know that his name is Don Draper. He seems worried. He seems scared about the cigarette campaign. And anyway, they end up sleeping together. So they are in a relationship of some sort that we know about.
Well, this is a cool feature. Weiner is known to. I think that in interviews he says something like he hates to just come out and state something, like to come out and state facts or to tell the viewers what they're seeing. He just likes to have it be part of the conversation. And so that when he introduces Dawn, that's the way that happens. You know, Midge just says, so am I supposed to believe this is the fabulous Don Draper? You know, head of the, you know.
And Midge is the woman, by the way. And we also get our second quote of people love smoking. So Midge actually says this in this scene as well. People love smoking. So we've gotten that word, that verbiage like twice in the first two scenes of the whole show. I was going to say one more thing about that. Now I can't remember what it was.
Well, I was going to say that Midge is she's fantastic in this scene. And she's got her little pedal pusher pants on and her shirt, you know, knotted at the waist. You know, it's not the traditional attire. She's very bohemian, and her apartment is one of those to die for New York apartments that you just can't hardly believe that anybody really has.
Gotcha.
You know, and I think that I have written down in my notes that this is MB's style, this apartment. It's that industrial, you know,
there's a studio,
loft, art studio vibe going on.
Yes, for sure.
And I also read that the lighting is fantastic. You know, when they wake up the next morning, the lighting in the apartment is awesome. And that you notice in the background that they've got all those shades and stuff, like they're all wonky and all different things. But the set designers had to cover up the buildings that were not, that wouldn't have been there in the 60s. You know, like you couldn't see out the view and not have a good 60s looking view of the city.
I remember now what I was going to say about Midge. in the afterglow, when they wake up the next morning, he says, we should get married. So you realize at that point that they've been in a relationship for a while and that marriage is possibly on the table for him. So you're learning more about their relationship every minute. So next let's move on to the next scene. So the next scene that you see is this woman who's entering a office building, and she gets on an elevator. So this is one of our main characters of the show. You're introduced to Peggy.
It's Peggy Olson.
It's Peggy Olson, my very favorite character in TV ever.
Played by Elizabeth Moss,
Yes.
who is one of the best actresses in TV ever.
Ever, absolutely. So we don't know her name at the time, but we see this woman enter an elevator full of men who are, saying some pretty vulgar comments, actually.
Well, and they know better. They're really messing with her because she is so demure looking. Look at her. Look at that. Her hat is not great. Her haircut is atrocious with those bangs. She's got her little pearl stud earrings. Her dress is long. Her coat is long. I mean, they know what they're doing when they're messing with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you really get a sense for the first time here of like how terrible like the scenario was for women in the workplace. I mean, this is very like hostile and predatory. They've got her trapped in this box, and they're back there behind her, and they're just like, look at what's his name there on the left.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Paul.
Yeah, Paul. We don't know that yet, but that's Paul, and he looks like he's gonna eat her alive back there. And that's just a great metaphor for what she's in for in the workplace.
So that's your next shocking moment of the show is really how women are treated in general in this office. So then we're gonna get to go to Pete's office. So the boys get off the elevator and they go into Pete's office, and Pete's on the phone with his fiance that we find out.
Yes.
Yeah, they're getting married on Sunday.
They are getting married on Sunday.
And today is his bachelor party.
That's correct. So he's talking on the phone with his fiance. He says things like, he's trying to console his fiance about the bachelor party.
It's fine, darling. Knowing these guys, we're probably gonna, see My Fair Lady or something.
Yeah.
That's what he says. And then he's like, I'm giving up my life to be with you. So we're finding out just how much of a real jackass this guy is.
Yeah.
He's plays
It's
the parts.
overplayed, I think.
Oh, but he plays it so well.
He really does. He's one of the most fascinating characters. He's one of the main three, I think, is what Mary Beth would, her
Oh yeah.
her theory. And I agree that it's Don Draper, Pete Campbell, and Peggy Olson who are the three main characters. And so we follow Pete for his entire career, and he has a great character arc. Because
and a great actor, by the way.
Yeah, a great actor, because he really makes you care about him, even though he's the worst. He's the absolute worst piece of crap. And you forgive him every time, and you root for him every time, and I don't know how he does that.
I would almost argue that Peggy is the main character of the show. So Peggy acts as sort of a...
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that. But
I really think it's Don Draper.
I'm sure that that's true. But Peggy is your key into this whole world. You're following Peggy's entrance into this world. You're following Peggy's leveling up through the series. You're following her just as much as you're following Dawn. Dawn already pre-existed in this world, but you're really coming to know this world through Peggy.
well, yeah, especially in this episode. I mean, I agree. In fact, one of my titles, my retitling of the episode, is Peggy's Big Day.
Peggy's big day.
Peggy does a lot today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big day for Peggy.
It really is. That's a great...
But I was
Yeah.
going to ask Nikki if did you know that Pete, the actor that plays Pete, was in Angel?
Yeah, I know.
So he wasn't,
He's Angel's son, Connor.
he wasn't very critically acclaimed then. I think he was really
young.
He really came out in this show.
No, I would have never guessed the quality of actor that
Yeah.
he turned out to be from that show.
So Pete's, again, he's on the phone with his fiance, and then he hangs up, and then he picks up this picture of her, and he's like, what a great gal.
What a great gal. She's such a great gal. Okay, here's my little surprise for you guys.
Okay, I can't wait.
Guess who's in this? This is the pilot episode, so this is not obviously the actress that ends up playing Trudy, his wife, who she's fantastic. I can't think of her name.
Yeah, I can't either.
The actors, I can't ever remember all the names.
It's hard.
But this is Matthew Weiner's mother.
Really?
Oh,
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Oh,
Isn't that nice?
Good thinking. That's a great Easter egg.
A thing like that.
A thing like that. Another great quote by Pete. What a great gal.
That's one of Pete's signature quotes throughout the
A
show.
thing like that. I love it. All right, next scene. We meet Joan Harris.
Oh, Joan.
Oh, Joan. Joan the bombshell, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Joan is like the office manager of all the secretaries. So she is familiarizing Peggy with what Peggy will be doing day to day. She's saying, with the right moves, you might be able to not have to work here. And really, with the right moves, you'll be out in the country.
She really establishes for us what's expected of women in the workplace and secretaries in this office. And so Peggy's learning and we're learning at the same time that she's meant to be a piece of meat. And I think Joan says you're supposed to be not so much a secretary, but somewhere in between a waitress and a mother.
Yes.
To all these men.
Yes. And so, you would think that Joan, of all people in this office, would know how it is to be demeaned and how to be talked down to and how to be literally treated like a piece of meat. But she really treats Peggy like a piece of meat, too. She's like, I want you to go home, cut some holes in a paper bag, evaluate your strengths and weaknesses. So, really look at yourself.
She said, put the paper bag over your head and look at yourself naked in the mirror.
Right.
And evaluate your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, so Joan's kind of a piece of work, too.
Yeah,
She's just as bad as the men, really.
Yeah, and what stood out to me is when she said that, when she said that to Peggy about what to expect, she said ultimately Peggy should aspire to, finding a guy, getting married. That's what you go to work for, to find a guy. Now then people say that about college, right?
Right.
You go to find your husband at college or whatever.
Yep.
And so in this era, you go to work, the sole purpose, it can't be for a career.
Right.
Are you kidding me? It's to find, a successful guy here in the workplace and move to the country.
That's
and
right.
even Joan says that.
And Joan
I think
doesn't-
Joan would say that she, at this point in the show, would say that that's what she wants to do.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
not critical of it at all.
No, that's
not
what I'm
only
saying.
does she accept it, she's like supporting it.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And then she's uncovering the typewriter on the desk.
Yes, the typewriter. Do you have a picture of the typewriter?
I don't.
That's okay. The typewriter is an anachronism. I learned that typewriter first came out. It's an electric typewriter, and it's called the IBM Selectric typewriter, and it came out the next year in 1961. But it was hard to find older, authentic typewriters that still worked, and plus they were really loud.
I got you.
So Weiner didn't want to use them, so he went 1 year out of
He
sequence.
fudged it a year.
Yeah, he fudged it a year.
I got you. That's a good tip.
But that's the first typewriter that the paper doesn't move across. You don't have to move the paper, like scoot your little bar. It's the first typewriter where the little type ball moves across the paper instead of the paper moving.
Okay, nice. Well done.
Thank you.
I love that. And also Joan says about the typewriter, the men who designed it made it easy enough for a woman to use.
Oh, goody.
So there you go.
I mean, she's really something in this episode, and you end up trying to figure out, is she really trying to be that bitchy, or is she really trying to support Peggy, or because she's the office manager, is she telling Peggy all this because ultimately the success, Peggy's success reflects back on Joan,
right,
with the guys.
I really think
you just don't know her motivation in here, and
it's like everybody has that one aunt, right, that says the most horrible things, but in her mind, she thinks she means well. Mm-hmm. She thinks she's doing you a favor. That's sort of like how Joan
That's
is.
a perfect description.
That's sort of how
and
she
Joan
is.
is on the end. She's on the inside. She's the inside. I mean, she has the inside joke, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Like she flirts. She knows what the guys mean. She knows how to throw it back at him.
Yes.
And Peggy just seems awkward and pitiful.
Yeah, I worked with a woman kind of like Joan. Not so much in the, women are supposed to get married or women are supposed to be sexy in the workplace, but she was so old-fashioned and she felt like it was her responsibility to teach me these things. So when I first started there on my first day, or first week, she was giving me all these tips, and they were so just kind of sexist, like if you wore your hair differently, you'd go farther.
Oh,
that
wow.
kind of thing, or if you
Just like what they're doing.
Gotcha.
yeah, it's the same kind of thing. She wasn't saying you'd get married and you go farther, but
Right.
that you'll get noticed if you look better in the workplace.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at the end of that scene, Joan says something like, we'd love to see more of your ankles. You've got these darling little ankles. I'd find a way to make them sing. And then at that time, you see Dawn walking up. So you realize at that moment that Peggy is going to be Dawn's secretary.
And Joan shapes right up. Joan quickly is, how do you say that? She not demurs to him, but she is.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, she instantly, gives way for him.
I know what you mean.
And acts very. I can't think of my word that I want for that.
Subservient?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a better word. But yeah, that's it.
All right, let's take our first break. We'll be right back. Okay, so then the next scene, you see Roger. You meet Roger for the first time.
Yay,
Let me
Roger.
cue up my picture with Roger.
Can we? Okay, you're gonna have a picture of Roger, but you haven't had a full-on picture of Don Draper. You've had him from the back.
Oh
right?
yeah, I really haven't had.
And-
I may not. I may
Which-
not have.
Which
I may
that's
not have
okay,
saved one.
but I don't think we should gloss over any longer the fact that Don Draper is ridiculously handsome. I mean,
Beautiful.
the casting is. I mean, I guess because we love it so much now, you go back and it's hindsight that the casting is perfect because we end up really liking these characters. But Don especially has to be like ridiculously handsome.
Yeah.
Like where people just do shit that they would never do.
Right.
Because he's so good looking. Like they swoon in his path.
Yes.
Yeah. And Roger's a little bit the same way.
Right.
Yeah. Roger's dreamy in his own older kind of way, but still very handsome.
Very, very, yes. So in this scene, you see Don go to his desk. He opens up a drawer that is full of shirts, like pressed, starched shirts. So you get the sense that he's sort of a scoundrel, that, he changes his shirts and first thing in the morning often, right? Yeah. So he's in there changing his shirt, and Roger's talking to him about the day. I'm not worried about the cigarette account. If I was, I'd ask you what you've got, but I'm not worried. And meanwhile, we know that Don has nothing and that he's really worried about it. And then you get your next really racist section of the show where Roger's like, do you know if any Jews work here? And you're just like, it's just one of those things that when you see it for the first time, you're like,
Oh yeah, you like audibly gasp, and a lot
But
of
that's
things.
that's y'all's generation though. You guys are more.
You don't gasp when he said that.
You gasp more than people. I mean, it was the way people talked. I just don't want you to think that they're doing it just simply for shock value.
I know what you mean.
It's exactly the way that people talk.
I know what you mean. And even in the South, I mean, people still talk this way, but it is very shocking, especially on TV. You never would see something like that on TV. So it's just really shocking. And so Roger's like, do you know if any Jews work here? And Don's like, or do you know if we have hired any Jews? And Don's like, not on my watch. And you're just like, what is happening? What show is this?
Hey, yeah, we skipped the fact though that we need to remind everybody that Don really is worried about the cigarette account. He tells that to Midge and everything.
Yes.
And we don't need to gloss over that because the whole episode leads up to him being in the meeting about Lucky Strike.
Yeah, the episode's really about two important meetings. The one with the
Quote unquote.
I can't say
Jew.
it.
It's hard to say.
It's almost like saying that other word that I can't even say
Yeah.
the letter of,
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't stand those kind of words. So it's the Jewish department store meeting and then the cigarette meeting.
Right.
And so that's what we're seeing him. We're
Right.
seeing his skills or his failures. We're seeing if he sinks or floats.
Yes. Also in this scene, after Roger leaves, Don is, trying to get his thoughts together. He's trying to get things together. He gets this piece of exercise equipment out. It's like springs on handles that he's like stretching. Anyway, when he gets this out of his drawer, he knocks over a little box, and you see that he has a purple heart in his drawer there. And so he looks at it, he places it back, and then he shuts the box back, and it says Donald Draper on the box, and he puts it back into his desk. So this is our first clue into the fact that he has been in combat. So that's important not to gloss over at all. And then we get our first introduction of Sal. I don't have a picture of Sal, but Sal is the art director. So Sal comes in, and they're talking about,
Does he come in right then?
I think so.
Yeah, because he makes that comment about how he looks like Gidget.
Yeah.
And there's another reference. So we were watching this the other day, Laura and I, when we were studying, and I was like, what's Gidget? Mm-hmm. I've never understood why he says that. And Laura's like, it used to be a show.
It was a show, and
or a movie.
Sally Field, bless her heart, like little tiny baby Sally Field was this little teeny bopper teenager. And I told Mary Beth, it's a very Sal is known in the show. I mean, you're supposed to know immediately that Sal is gay and in the closet about it.
Spoiler.
And so, I mean, I think we're doing you a service if you watch that show and didn't get that you should get that.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
I think they make it pretty clear.
And I think that I was telling Mary Beth, she started laughing at me because I was like, that is such a reference for a gay man to make to Gidget. Like, why would you call Donald Draper a Gidget?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sal says, this is also the scene where the German lady comes in, Greta. Mm-hmm. She does their cigarette research. And so she comes in with this big document talking about the cigarette research that's come in. And basically what she's saying, and she references Freud, is that people have a death wish. And so she's talking about this. And so anyway, Sal says this quote, and he's like, you mean people are living one way and secretly thinking the exact opposite?
Yeah.
And so that's like, and you're just like, oh my God, they're just beating us over the head with the fact that he's gay.
And Sal's artwork has this handsome man in a hammock, and although they have no idea what they're going to tell Lucky Strike, Don has to walk in there with something, so he's had Sal draw up this mock-up, and it just says relax, and it has this, sexy looking guy, and Don's like, I don't know, Sal, can you put a sexy looking woman in that? I mean,
he's like,
we're going to have a little
girl,
more than
I
that.
can do that.
But nobody knows. Like Don isn't hinting, he isn't being like tongue in cheek with Sal about his sexuality. No, everyone's oblivious.
Right. So anyway, the research, let's not gloss over the research because that part's important. Basically what her research is saying, that if you love danger, you'll love smoking. And anyway, Don is like, this is not what we want to push. And so he throws the research in the garbage, and she's just like, well, good luck with your meeting, So anyway, so she leaves, Sal leaves, and then he lays down to take a nap. He can't deal with it anymore, and he just needs a minute.
I think did you notice Don calls her Miss before she leaves? He calls her Miss, and she's like,
Doctor.
It's Doctor. It's Doctor so-and-so.
That's right. All right, so Don is taking a nap, and you see this image of him sort of like drifting off, and the light is sort of changing in the office, so you know that some time has elapsed. And then you hear these like explosions in the background, and he even sort of winces his eyes at these explosions. And so that's another hint that this man has seen combat, or he's been in some sort of something has happened to him. You don't really know what yet, but you know something.
And there's a lot of talk, in analysis of the show, about the fly on the ceiling light when he's laying there that. So, I don't know. I've heard, though, that Weiner just said it wasn't really that big of a deal.
So as he's waking up, Peggy comes into his office, and she wakes him up, and she's like, hey, Pete's outside your office. And he's like, oh, crap, he doesn't know I'm sleeping in here, does he? And she's like, no. And he's like, good. So anyway, he gets up, but I do want to point this part out. So this is the first time that you see sort of this really great glimpse of the artwork in this scene. So I do want to talk a little bit about this piece of art, and I've got it written down so that I won't mess this up. So I think this is really interesting. This is a painting called Butternut, and it's by a woman named Mikhail Shapiro, who was actually born in Israel, which I think is really cool in contrast to this episode. There's also another piece of art by the same artist in Midge's apartment at the very beginning.
I wondered about that. I didn't know if that was a textile or a piece of art. I love it.
Yeah. So that piece of art is called Spoon Dance, and this one's called Butternut. But it's a recent work of art. So this was created in the year 2000. So it's not vintage. It just sort of looks vintage.
Interesting. That one or Midge's?
Both.
Oh.
So yeah, early thousands on both
so
of these
that's
pieces
cool.
of art. Yeah. But I love that it's done by a woman, and I love that this woman was born in Israel. She's an American. She came to the USA when she was 1 year old. But I think the fact that she's Israeli really correlates with this episode with Rachel Menken, who you're going to meet later.
It's odd to me that they wouldn't go back and get an authentic piece of art, but I think that they were trying to save money because there's a lot of references to them trying to save money for the pilot episode.
Yes.
They show, there's a city scene that they show, and they said specifically it was to save money. They just showed the scene out of the window down so that all they had to do was park cars and stuff in front of the building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't show the whole city or whatever. They can't recreate the whole scene.
I got you. I gotcha.
And then also, art-wise, just you guys watch the episode for the Brutalist piece. I don't know who made it or anything, but it's a cool piece.
Yeah, it's in this episode. We'll try to point it out in a later episode where we can see it better. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as this series goes on, the set decor gets so much more elaborate. It just really gets better and better and better. I think for the pilot, they didn't go overboard, but we've got a lot of stuff to show you later. Mm-hmm. So after that scene, Pete just sort of barges in. And so this is the first time that you get all three main characters in the same room. So I personally would argue that this show is about the three of these characters. It's about Dawn, Pete, and Peggy. I feel like everything else is always important, but these three are the central characters who are going to take us through the show. So Pete just sort of barges in and let's see.
Peggy's still standing there with her glass of water and aspirin for Dawn.
Yeah. He comes in and he's like so condescending to Peggy, and he's like, "So are you Amish or something?" Like looking her up and down with her outfit. And he goes, "It wouldn't be a sin for us to see your legs. And if you pull in your waist a little bit, you might look like a woman." And so you're just like flabbergasted at how much of an asshole he is.
I know.
And so she just ignores him though. She just like looks back at Mr. Draper and she's like, "Do you need anything else? Am I done here?" And he's like, "Hey, I'm just getting warmed up, you know, whatever." And so anyway, Don takes up for Peggy. He's like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell here left his manners at the frat house." Mm-hmm. And so that's nice to see that he's taking up for her. But man, she is just the worst.
There is no love lost between Pete and Dawn.
That's true.
You can immediately tell that.
So they're on their way to, Pete was coming to get him to take Dawn to the meeting now with Rachel Menken, who we meet next. So Rachel Menken owns, or her father owns, Menken's department store, which is a Jewish department store which shares a wall with Tiffany's. And they're worried because their sales have been super flat. And so she has come to Sterling Cooper, which is the ad agency where they work, to try to get some innovative ideas. And she's not met with much, you know, it's just sort of really awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because they, you know, we've already established Roger asking if any Jewish people work there, because he was gonna march one of them in. To be like their token Jewish person to fit in with her, but it goes further than that. They're trying to do anything they can think of to be Jewish friendly, you know.
Right.
But what's really funny is they've got refreshments out there and snacks, and instead of like, you know, it would have been smart if they had gotten bagels or something. That would have been very Jewish friendly. But instead, they're so clueless that they served Rachel Menken shrimp cocktail, which is not kosher. And it's just really funny because they're eating their shrimp cocktail and she never eats it.
Right.
And at one point she gets really pissed off in the meeting and she puts her cigarette out in her shrimp cocktail.
Exactly.
And look at Dawn's Bloody Mary. I mean, they are drinking and smoking, man. They are. The theme of the show is drinking and smoking.
And there's Don Draper. We haven't
Yes.
shown his picture yet.
And
Yes.
as a former smoker, all I do is want a cigarette while I'm watching this show. So if that was their intent, they did it.
They did it. So I did take this screenshot specifically because Laura wanted to point out the clock in the background.
Yeah, but you can't see very much of it.
You can see
like
part
that.
of it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, I've got these little facts, and whenever you guys want me to share them, I've got facts from the year 1960. I should have been trying to sprinkle them in, but one of the facts is that the whole era of the set and the decor back then is, you call it Eames era, right? So that's these clocks, these atomic mid-century clocks are Eames era, and it really is the same. Okay, so they're like Danish modern, atomic looking. They're all shaped like that. They're shaped like sunbursts or atomic bursts, starbursts, whatever
Right.
you want to call them. So you see those everywhere. And of course, Sterling Cooper would have top of the line decor. I wish they had like interior decorator as part of the show. It comes in and out. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, definitely mid-century modern style. And I think the point I was going to make is, that's hot now and trendy. It is. Do you guys know who Emma Chamberlain is?
Yes.
So like her apartment was in Architectural Digest, and she's the idol of the young, social media influencers and all that kind of stuff. She's mid-century modern, so
Got
it's
you.
totally in style. But I think the interesting thing is people call it also Mad Men era. Like I think it's going to become a description
Right.
of the style,
Right.
because of the show,
Right.
Because it's so mid-century.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So long story short, this meeting goes terribly. Basically, Pete says, not verbatim, but basically, there's a lot of other firms that could better handle this account, meaning Jewish firms. And she's just basically like done. And anyway, she sort of insults Don. Don's like, I'm not going to be spoken to by a woman. And he storms out. So that just is sort of how the meeting ends, and it doesn't go well.
You want another fun fact?
Sure.
That's the very first line that Matthew Weiner wrote of the
Really?
pilot, was the line where Dawn says, I won't be spoken to like that from a woman, and storms out of the room.
That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
I love it. So I did forget one scene. So there was one cut scene there where we see Peggy at the doctor's office. So apparently Joan has talked to Peggy about going to this specific doctor so that she can get birth control. So she's in this office, and of course, he says the most horrible things to her. He's like,
It's just a whole nother cringe.
It's creepy.
It's just like stereotypical cringe, what you would expect from a man of the time period, just like you've seen throughout the whole episode.
Yeah. He's like, I would hope that just because I'm going to give you this medicine doesn't mean that you're going to come be some sort of strumpet or some sort of town pump.
Now, keep in mind, Joan has sent Peggy to this guy.
Yes.
This is still Peggy's first day. This is still Peggy's big day.
Peggy's big day.
Yeah.
She's on her lunch hour or some crap.
This might be her first gynecologist appointment, too.
I think it may
You
be.
know, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But now people are quick to point out that it wasn't every OB gynecologist in the world that acted like that. This guy was a real creep.
Yeah, he was real bad.
There's people who had, they don't want you to think that every OB gynecologist acted like that.
So while he's performing his exam, she just like fixates on this calendar with this landscape, and she's just like sort of drawn into this picture, just sort of what's the word? Desensitize herself from what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we see on the calendar that it is, what is the date? March 1960.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that it's March 1960. So what was going on in the world in March 1960?
March 1960. I'm looking for my notes. I figured you were going to come to that.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do it kind of quick. I'll do some of them kind of quickly.
Okay.
of course, we know what Peggy's there for. That's one of the big things that happens in 1960.
Right.
The FDA produces the world's first commercially produced birth control pill.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a big deal because people just didn't do that. That's why that guy is acting like that. That doctor's acting like that. You know, you didn't take the pill for that reason. The pill had been on the scene a little while, but when people had bad cramps or, you know, this, that, and the other health reasons, it wasn't purely for contraceptive use.
Right.
Okay, so John F. Kennedy defeats Nixon for president. There is a reference to that maybe in this episode where, where Roger tries to talk Don into working on Nixon's campaign.
Right.
You think he's talking about Kennedy at first, but he's talking about Nixon.
Yeah, spoiler alert there with who wins the election, because there's a whole series of episodes about who's going to win the election.
Yep.
And let's see, the America's biggest companies at the time: General Motors, U.S. Steel, General Electric, Chrysler, and Standard Oil.
Okay.
OPEC was created, so all that was on the forefront of what was happening. And this is good. You guys are going to like this. So these words all appeared in print for the very first time in 1960.
Oh.
Never been in print before. So a AAA battery.
Okay.
An arcade game. Cruise control. Discotheque.
I'm surprised that all these were that early.
I know. Fast food. Golden oldie.
Golden oldie.
What would be a golden oldie to them?
Well,
I guess
something
the
from like the 30s. Hair gel, mayo, new wave, plant-based, pre-approved,
Oh, wow.
reality check, rock star, soul food, theme park, valet parking, wide receiver, wigged out, and yeesh.
Yeesh.
I would have lost that in a trivia
Yeah.
contest. The
Man, that's
yeesh.
great.
I feel like they surely had valet parking for decades before that, but I guess maybe not.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Starting salaries. A teacher's starting salary was $5,135.
Wow.
Police officer $4,400 and an engineer $9,400. So it's just good to know this because they talk about money a lot in the
Right.
show. Let's see. The average income for a family was $5,600.
Wow.
Minimum wage was $1 an hour. A new house, your average new house was $16,500.
Oh my gosh.
Interestingly enough, over 90% of American households had at least one TV,
Oh wow.
and 65% were churchgoers. But the TV comes into play. You know, Sterling Cooper has to embrace television. I guess they are embracing it when we're watching, but
Yeah.
it becomes like super important to their
Those are great facts.
to their
I
campaigns.
love that. Very good.
I thought there was one more that I wanted to say. Okay, anyway, I'll throw some more in later if they become relevant to what
Okay.
we're talking about.
I love that. I love that you did that.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, let's take our next break and we'll finish up the show in just a second. All right, so now we're going into the cigarette meeting.
Okay,
Right?
it's the climax
Well,
of the show.
Actually, I think I missed something. So after isn't there a part? No, I'm wrong. Excuse me, I've misspoke. So now we're into the cigarette meeting, right?
Well, no, Don and Pete have to walk back to the meeting. I mean, walk back. You see Don and Pete walking back from that meeting before
Okay.
before the cigarette meeting.
Okay.
If that's the one you were talking about.
Yeah, maybe so. What does he say? I think he says something.
Are you talking about the funny quote?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was after the cigarette meeting.
Yeah, I think it is after the cigarette meeting. I think it is.
I don't think it is, but okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because Pete's talking about how well Don did in the meeting
Yeah.
and how he would follow him into battle.
Yeah. No, you're right. Pete does catch up with him after the Rachel Mencken meeting and says something like, she was way out of line. But it's a very quick, brief encounter.
Okay.
It's not where the funny quote is.
Okay.
All right, so let's enter the cigarette meeting.
Okay.
All right, everybody's in there. Everybody's smoking. The man who owns Lucky Strike's name is Lee Garner. He's there with his son, Lee Garner Jr. There's one point where Lee Garner is smoking and starts to cough, and like literally everybody follows suit, and everybody's
Like fake coughing.
like coughing with him, so he's not coughing by
Yeah.
himself.
That's my interpretation too. I listened to some people talking about that scene that said that there was so much smoke in there that they all spontaneously started coughing. And I was like, no. They were definitely doing that on purpose so that he wasn't the only one coughing in the room.
Yep.
And that everything's fine.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's right. So you can see that Don is just like got his head down. He is like so forlorn. He is like over it. He doesn't want to be in that meeting. Roger is taking the reins. You know, he's talking to the people. And finally, Roger sort of looks over and he's like, Don, I think that's your cue. And Don's just like
For
shuffling
what seems
through
like
his-
a really long time.
He's like, you know, I'm a Lucky Strike man from way back. He's like literally got nothing. And he's just like fumbling. And anyway, then Pete just like stands up in his chair and he's like really arrogant. He's like, I've got this. I'm going to save this meeting. Don's got nothing. I'm going to fix this. And so he gets up and he's basically like reciting the research that we heard earlier. And he's like, you know, talking about this man, you know, it's just as dangerous to get in your car every day. You know, you've got to get to work. So he's like, go ahead, smoke your cigarette. You still got to get where you're going.
That's another good name for the episode. You still got to get where you're going.
And so Lee Garner's like, so you're going to die anyway? Die with us?
He's like, are you insane?
And so anyway, Pete just really gets put in his place, and Lee Garner and Lee Garner Jr., they stand up, and Lee Garner Jr. says something like, well, I guess if we've got this problem, everybody's got this problem.
Because let me interject here. Well, what we probably didn't mention is the reason they're having this meeting, and it's a big deal to figure out what kind of ad they're going to do for their cigarettes, is because the government has just cracked down on advertising for cigarettes, and you can't say that they're healthy or that they're not bad for you. And you can't, it's really dangerous to even talk about any medical research having to do with your cigarettes or cigarettes in general. So they were just kind of like tongue-tied and their hands were tied. They didn't know what they were going to do.
Right.
Should they talk about how dangerous it is or talk about how it's not dangerous? You know, if they talk about any of the medical stuff, it's going to just kind of taint their ad.
Right. So when Lee Garner Jr. says this, when he's like, I guess if we've got this problem, everybody's got it. And so you just see it, like Dawn just has this major epiphany, right? And so they do like a close-up on him, and he's like, can I say something? And then Roger,
And then that's my favorite line.
Go ahead.
My pick of the show is Roger. He says, well, I don't know, Dawn, can you? Like, Jesus Christ, we've been sitting here this whole time trying to wait for you to, you know, have something interesting to say.
Yeah, and so basically he's like, you know, if we can't say that cigarettes are healthy, nobody can. And, you know, they're like, well, yeah, that's what we've been saying. And Dawn's like, but we can say anything. We can say anything we want. How are your cigarettes made? And so Lee Garner goes through this big spiel about how the cigarettes are made. They're planted in North Carolina in the sunshine, blah, blah, blah. They're toasted. And he's like, that's it. It's toasted. And so that's like the line of the meeting. You know, everybody else's cigarettes are poisonous. The Lucky Strike cigarettes are toasted. And so it's like this big deal, like,
And like everybody, you can see it on everybody's face, especially Roger, where they're just like they've witnessed a miracle. Like Don Draper throughout this show is shown to be some kind of genius. I mean, he is a genius, but I mean, they're just always floored by everything he comes up with, and it's always really good. But the people, the ad men, you know, they're so impressed. They swoon. The men in the show swoon as much over Don's intelligence as the women do.
yes, that's right. So then we have the segue where, actually, I think Laura was right. I think that Pete did say that funny line in the hallway, didn't he?
It was in the hallway walking back after the cigarette commercial.
What was the line?
Well, he was saying, I don't know all the lead up to it, but Pete was saying, I would follow you. I would gladly follow you into battle, and I know that lots of men have already done that, and I'm proud to be on your team. And he sticks out his hand to shake his hand, and Dawn's like, my favorite quote, Dawn says, let's take it a little slower. I don't want to wake up pregnant.
Yeah, that was after the Mencken meeting.
Are you sure?
I'm
Yes,
positive.
yes, because Pete was taking up for him because, you know, he huffed out of there. Pete gets up and runs out after him. Like, I don't blame you, Dawn. I wouldn't let a woman talk to me like that either. You know.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's one of my favorite quotes too. So then now after the cigarette meeting, everybody's celebrating in Dawn's office. You know, they're pouring drinks. Everybody's excited. Roger comes in there and he's like, you know, you've saved the day. And then the bachelor party sort of commences. And Dawn's like, I don't know, guys. I think I'm going to set this one out. So he's done. And so then Pete realizes that Dawn knows that Pete has gone through the garbage. So Pete came in there, went through the garbage, found the research, and that's why he presented that death wish statement in the garbage. And basically Dawn's like, I'm not having this. Mm-hmm. Kicks Pete out. Pete goes.
Because Dawn's like, it's not like there's a magic machine that makes an exact duplicate copy of a piece of paper that you have written out.
Yeah, not yet. Not until a few more episodes.
Yeah. So then Peggy comes into the office and, you know, she's like apologetic. And she puts her hand on Dawn's hand too. Mm-hmm. So
she's making an effort to follow Joan's advice, and you can tell that she's uncomfortable and she's shaky about it, and she doesn't know how to flirt with him, or she doesn't want to flirt with him, but she's going to try. So she puts her hand on Dawn's hand, and Dawn, you know, it's so interesting. We could talk forever about Don Draper and Peggy Olson and their relationship. But his reaction to her is unlike his reaction to any other woman that we've seen him with so far in the show. And he's like mad that she would make that kind of advance and that it's inappropriate. And he tells her,
I'm your boss, Peggy, not your boyfriend.
Not your boyfriend. And, you know, kind of like straighten up.
More like a dad is what he sounds like.
Yeah, like a dad.
Yeah. So, you know, some people may think that it's because Peggy is not conventionally beautiful, you know, like a Joan would be. But Nikki came up with a really fascinating idea last night, which I think could be it.
I've always theorized that Dawn doesn't have sex with women that he respects. And so the reason that he and Peggy never hook up is because she's one of the only women that he respects as a human being. Mm-hmm. And then there's another woman, the only other woman that he doesn't have sex with.
You'll find out about
You'll find out later. But he respects that woman more than anybody else, too. Well, that's all well and good, but he doesn't know yet in this episode that he respects Peggy because he's barely met her at all.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, well, my explanation for that is that maybe he's not attracted to Peggy because Peggy's not attracted to him.
Right.
She's one of the only women in the world who isn't charmed by his good looks and his charm and his magnetism and his intelligence.
I just disagree with that.
Because she's not convincingly flirting with him. Like, she is awkward at it. She doesn't want him, and she's like trying to choke down her vomit to try and flirt with him, and he's turned off by that.
Yeah, I think that she respects him. I think that she thinks that he's awesome in the beginning, but I don't think she's sexually attracted to him.
He wants to be wanted by
Well,
women.
I mean, I think she is.
Really?
I mean, I think everybody in that building is.
I think
that's
you are.
The point. No, I think it's the point. I think it's the point of him. You know, it's part of his superiority. I hate that word.
Gotcha. But then sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
It's just, I mean, I think you guys are sort of defending Peggy a little bit, but I mean, she set up the whole show to be not that kind of girl. She's not that kind of girl.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why he's not attracted to her.
I think he's not attracted. Okay, well, we'll just agree to disagree. I just don't think that's true.
Okay, so basically at the end, he's like, if you ever let Pete go through my trash again, you're out. You're toast. And she's, you know, very apologetic, and that's how that scene ends. So then we cut to the boys at the strip club. They're watching the girls dance. It's very loud in there, filled with men.
Sal makes another remark.
Well, yeah, one of the girls in there says, oh, wow, it's so hot and loud in here and filled with men. And Sal's like, I know. So I think this is also an interesting point that the women who were dancing on stage are very curvy.
Oh, me too. That's what I put that in my notes too.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of women that you see on TV these days are just skin and bones, right? But the women in this show up there dancing, very curvy.
Yeah, she was the girl on stage was supposed to be kind of like Marilyn Monroe, you know.
Yeah. I love that. So, there's a group of girls who comes up with
P.S. And by the way, do you know how small Marilyn Monroe
tiny,
curvy was? I mean,
little
really
bitty.
small.
Yeah. So,
Actually, I thought you were going in a different direction with that. I thought she was a size 16.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
No, I thought I heard that she was
No.
a size 16.
I don't think
What are you
so.
saying that she was?
She's small. I'm saying that people just
They say she was curvy, quote unquote, but she was actually tiny.
she's probably like more like a 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so a group of girls comes up to the booth where the boys are sitting, and you know they're flirty and they're excited to be there with those guys. And so Pete starts to try to get fresh with this girl, right? He's like making remarks and you know trying to feel her up, and she's like, "Stop! You know, I don't want to do that." And he's like, "Come on!" And she's like, "No, I'm gonna leave." And he's like, "Fine." You know, and he's like dejected.
Buy the girls what they want.
Yeah, he's like so dejected at his bachelor party, and he's just pouty. He's just sitting there really pouty.
And so he's kind of emasculated, possibly.
Yeah.
And that's what we hypothesize is what happens next, the reason for what happens next.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So then we have a dinner scene with Rachel Menken and Don Draper. So Roger earlier has like told Don to go make up. He's like, "You've got to go make up with her. She's the client. You know, fix it." So Dawn goes to eat with Rachel, and there she is with her Mai Tai. Laura's got one too.
I tried to mimic her with my prop this evening.
You've done great.
Drinking my Mai Tai.
We're real impressed with your drink. So, you know, they have this dinner. Don Draper is incredibly charming, of course, as he always is.
I mean, can you imagine how charming you have to be after he's insulted her the way that he has at that meeting today for her to swoon like that over him?
And he insults her again at dinner. I mean, he apologizes, but then he's like, "Why aren't you married? Wouldn't having a family make you happier than all the headaches of business?" And she's just like, "Dude, this is what I want to be doing." Mm-hmm. So he does apologize to her, but he's still sort of an asshole. So, let's see.
He asked her if she wants another drink, and she's like, "No, but you can go back and tell your boss that, you know, I'm sufficiently charmed,
Yes.
and I'll see you Monday."
But there's a point in this dinner where she looks at him and she sees something in him that not everybody sees. She makes a remark and calls him out on being disconnected, out of place. That he's not like he's
an outsider.
Yeah, he's an outsider like she is. So, and he looks shocked at this. He's like, looks like deer in the headlights, almost like he's been found out about something. And you don't know what that is, but they sort of drop it. But there is something there that is noteworthy because she does see something in him that is not on the surface.
It's like what Laura was saying, that he's so over the top charming to win her back, but it's exactly that. It's over the top, and she doesn't buy it. She can see through that he's putting on a show of what he thinks a charming man should be like.
Right.
How a charming man would apologize to her by flirting with her, by coming on to her, and she sees that he's trying too hard.
Right. So that goes well. He apologizes. She leaves. Everything's good in Rachel Menken land. So then we cut to Peggy's apartment and someone knocking on the door. So Pete, drunk as hell, is knocking on a door. A woman answers, and he's like, "Does Peggy live here?"
And he can barely stand up.
Oh, yeah. So she's like, "Yeah, just a second." She's like sketched out, but she goes to get Peggy. She's like, "Do you know him?" And Peggy's like, "Yeah, we work together." So Peggy's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm getting married on, whatever day." And she's like, "Yeah, I heard about that." And so he's just so drunk and like, what the hell is he doing there?
And he says the next line, which I think could be the title of the show, "You must think I'm a creep." That's what he tells her. He's like, you must think I'm a creep.
That would be a great title.
Well, yeah, I think he's a creep. How does he know where she even lives?
Yeah.
I guess he looked
I
it
mean,
up.
he's prepared. He's prepared in advance for this to happen.
Yeah. So basically, he's just like comes on to her and she's into it. She bites. So I don't know what to say about this. I feel like it's out of left field a little bit because in the office earlier, he was mean to her. He demoralized her.
I think that was a put on too. I think that that's another example of over the top, like of him acting the way he thinks he's supposed to act because of the way she dresses and the way she looks. That she's not conventionally beautiful, and so that he's supposed to insult her.
Like she's easy prey.
Yeah, like she's easy prey, but he thinks it would make him less of a man if he didn't put her down.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to put her down because she's not trying hard enough to be beautiful. So, but I think secretly, the reason he tried so hard to make that effort was because he did find her attractive.
Well, and also he was rejected earlier that night. He was rejected.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about in the office. The reason he puts her down so hard is because he's secretly attracted
Maybe
to her.
so, because
but
he's
he
like
feels
a
like
kid.
he has to cover it up because he's not supposed to be attracted to her.
Yeah. But also he was rejected earlier that night in the bar. And I think he didn't want to go to bed that night without having some sort of conquering moment.
But why? I mean, we're about to run out of time. But
I know.
Why in the world do you think that Peggy slept with him? I mean, she didn't even sleep with Donald Draper.
Well, Donald didn't try to sleep with her. He's not attracted to her.
I don't know. So
Yeah, but you're saying that he's not attracted to her because she's not attracted to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's true.
maybe it's chemical with them. Because as you'll see as this goes on, they do have a very interesting relationship. So maybe it's beyond what we can see on the outside. Maybe there is something chemical to this attraction that we don't see and that we can't understand.
It's interesting. You guys put your comments below. Why did Peggy
Not
take
sleep
up
with Dawn, but
take
slept
up
with
Pete? I mean,
Yeah.
take Pete up on his offer.
But he does say, he says, I wanted to see you tonight. And she's like, me? And he goes, I had to see you. And so then they slip into the apartment and you know what happens in there. So, so that happens. Leave your comments below. We're interested to know what you think. All right, last scene of the evening.
Last scene. Here we
Don's
go.
on his way home. He's on the train. He's done for the day. So he's traveling. You see him traveling. He's on the train. Lots of really bizarre music.
Yeah, they weren't sure what they were doing with the music yet in the pilot.
Yeah, so lots of weird music is happening.
It was called The Caravan. I do know that. That's the name of the piece.
Oh, is it?
But they said it's kind of like a maniacal playing of it or whatever.
So then you get your last shock of the pilot episode, and that is that Don goes home to not only a wife, but a wife and children. So he is a family man.
I think the weird music was supposed to play up to that. You see him on a train, it's raining, it's dark, he's got his hat kind of half over his face, and that weird music makes you feel like, what the hell is happening?
Right.
Like, where is he going?
So first he goes into the bedroom where his wife is laying, and then he goes upstairs to check on his kids. The last scene of the show is a pull-out shot where you see Don checking on his kids, and then his wife comes and is looking at him. Her viewpoint now is of his back, of the back of his head, like what we see at the beginning of the episode, which I feel like is interesting. And he's looking forward. He looks down at his kids for a minute, but then he just looks forward. So he's looking forward into basically nothingness. She's looking at the back of his head. So it's like she's chasing him, but what's he chasing? What's he after? What's in his line of sight?
And while this is happening, they are ending with this really sweet song, On the Street Where You Live. You know, this Vic Damone. Do you know who Vic Damone is?
I don't.
So I think, he was a crooner of that time period.
Laura, don't say
So,
crooner.
Like the gangsters and stuff listen to Vic Damone.
Well, and also it's from My Fair Lady, which is what they talked about earlier in the show. Like they were joking they would go to see My Fair Lady for the bachelor party.
I got you. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack here in this scene. I also would like to say that, the very beginning of the episode started with him scribbling frivolously on his work. He's working. Then he goes to see now that we know Midge is his mistress, he went to see his mistress. Then he's at work. Then he goes out for drinks with this other woman. So all of these things are being put before his family. The shock value at the end is not only meant, in my opinion, to be shocking. It's also meant to symbolize that he puts his family last. So I think that that's going to be a very foreshadowing situation moving forward. I also want to tell you guys my name of the episode.
Okay. Oh, good.
Town Pump.
Oh, nice.
So let's recap, because I want you guys to all put your names for the episode down there.
But I think Dawn's the Town Pump.
Of course, Dawn's the town.
Yeah,
pump.
so
course he is.
Peggy's not.
Spoiler: not only is Don Draper an alcoholic, he's a nympho.
Oh, well,
He's
spoiler
a
alert.
sex addict.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us your favorite images in the episode. What did you like? Did you see anything cool in the background that we missed? Let us know what you're going to rename the episode, and let us know your favorite quote of the episode.
Is it going to be the Town Pump? Peggy's Big Day?
I like Peggy's Big Day.
I love smoking.
Yeah. I would change mine to Peggy's Big Day.
You must think I'm a creep.
So guys, thank you guys so much for listening to the pilot episode of Mad
I wish
Men.
we were smoking.
Oh, God.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes.
No, don't smoke.
We didn't talk about smoking enough.
We should get a smoke machine, like a fog machine for the background, and just be shooting smoke up over
Yes.
us. That'd be great.
That's so funny. If you're watching on YouTube,
I'm getting a fake one next time.
Yeah.
When in my life am I ever going to be able to do that again?
Get the candy cigarettes.
Yeah.
if you're watching on YouTube, we would love it if you liked this video. Comment below. Let us know if you're enjoying this. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Watch the second episode. It's the ladies' turn this time. So we get to talk about the women.
And if you're watching out there in podcast land, please come over and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love to have you. We do reselling videos weekly on our channel, as well as a Friday night show called Flippin' and Sippin', where we have a drink, talk about the weekend, and sell some items as well. So we would love to have you there. As always, make sure you stay tuned to see what Fatbird finds next, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.